Episode 77 of Monster Kid Radio with a little of the Beloved Invaders. This is from their album Tamarindo, and the song is Tamarindo. You can find out more about them over at thebelovedinvaders.com. There's a reason why I'm playing them on this week's episodes of Monster Kid Radio, and we'll get to that in a minute. Oh yeah, it's Monster Kid Radio, the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. I'm your host, Derek M. Cook. I'm excited that you're here this week because we have an interview with a filmmaker by the name of Dennis Vincent. Now, Dennis was involved with the documentaries The Witch's Dungeon, 40 Years of Chills, and The Aurora Monsters, the model craze that gripped the world. These are great documentaries, and now he's turning his eye to making a narrative film. And because he's a monster kid like us, he's taking a look at a John Agar film from 1967 called Night Fright. In this film, John Agar plays Sheriff Clint Crawford, and it's up to him and a few others to help defend this small Texas town from a mutated monster running around, causing all sorts of panic and chaos and doing whatever it is that monsters do in the late 60s B-movies. I like that movie. It's a guilty pleasure. No, it's not particularly well made. It's pretty low budget, and it does show its seams, but John Agar is just so darn sincere, and John Agar rules. So you know it's enjoyable, and Dennis Vincent loved that movie so much that he's decided to take a crack at remaking, or at least making a film inspired by this movie. His upcoming movie is called The Cosmic Creature, and we're going to talk a little bit about The Cosmic Creature with him after we talk about his background and his past and what led him to being a monster kid and wanting to make a movie inspired by one of the not-so-classic genre films of yesteryear. Now, the reason we're playing The Beloved Invaders is because The Beloved Invaders is actually going to appear in his film. Come back in a couple of days for the next episode, and you'll actually hear one of the songs that will appear in the film soundtrack because they're actually playing it in a scene in the movie. You'll get to hear Tamarindo in its entirety at the end of this episode, of course. Follow the link to their website over in our show notes over at monsterkidradio.net. Also at our website, you're going to find all the other things that we've got going on. Our YouTube channel, our Live 365 channel, our Flickr album, and our contact information. Our contact information is monsterkidradio@gmail.com. Or our phone number is 503-479-5657. That's 503-479-5MKR. If you need to get a hold of me about anything we've talked about on any of the episodes, all 77 of them, of Monster Kid Radio, feel free to drop me a line, and maybe we'll do a feedback episode down the line again like we have in the past. We also are on Facebook. We have both a page and a group on Facebook. If you join the group, you can chat it up with other listeners and fans of Monster Kid Radio between episodes, or even while you listen. But there is a page, and as of this recording, we have 260 likes on our Facebook page. We just hit 250 not too long ago. I mentioned something on Facebook. We got 260. I would love for us to try to hit 300 likes of our Monster Kid Radio Facebook page by the end of the month. If we can do that, well, that's just kind of awesome. Something else that would be just kind of awesome is if we can get 50 reviews in the iTunes store. And I'm talking honest reviews. I'm not just looking for a handout 5-star review, although we do love those too. We're looking for 50 honest reviews in the iTunes store. As of this recording, we have 40. Here's the deal. We get to 50 honest reviews in the iTunes store, and I'm going to do a Creature from the Black Lagoon spinoff kind of thing. Already have some content recorded, have some ideas for some future content. Would love to get that going as part of the Monster Kid Radio Network if we can get to 50 reviews in the iTunes store. Of course, we can also be found on Stitcher and a number of other podcast directories. We appreciate all the support and all the reviews that we've received from all of the listeners. We also appreciate the support that Dorado Films has given Monster Kid Radio. Last week, we had an interview with an actor by the name of Roger Brown. Roger Brown played Argo Man in the film Argo Man, the Fantastic Superman. This is one of my favorite movies, period. It's cheesy, it's fun, it's campy, it's Euro Spy, it's superhero, it's sexy, it's just a fun film. Dorado Films hooked us up with a copy of the movie to give away to one of the listeners of Monster Kid Radio. You have to go back and listen to episode number 75 to find out how you can enter. The deadline is tomorrow night, March 5th, for you to enter the drawing for this DVD. Episode 75 is an interview with Roger Brown, so it's an enjoyable episode anyway if you haven't already listened to it. And if you have, well, you already know how you can enter. So get your entries in if you want to get a copy of the DVD, courtesy of Dorado Films. You can find out more about them over at DoradoFilms.com or follow the link in the show notes. The other piece of business that I want to go ahead and mention, now I don't have an official Facebook event set up yet. However, March 20th is the final film in the Cinescopio series here in Portland, Oregon. If you're in the Portland, Oregon area, you need to go to the Hollywood Theater March 20th for another Santo film. This is Santo versus the Monsters. And if it's the film that I think it is, it's Santo and Blue Demon fighting Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, a bunch of vampire women. It's just going to be awesome. I've seen that movie before, and I hope that's the one because it'll be on the big screen. Never had a chance to see it on the big screen with a group of like-minded individuals. There will be a panel with real-life luchadors after the film as well. Keep an eye out on Facebook for the event that I'm going to be creating for that. Now, if you can't make it to this Monster Kid Radio crash, don't worry. I bring my recorder with me every time I go somewhere like this. I record at the show, and we're going to put it on a future episode of Monster Kid Radio. I want to go ahead and get to part one of our chat with filmmaker Dennis Vincent. But first, a few words from another podcast, and you're going to hear some music from the audio of the film Night Fright. And then we're going to roll into Dennis Vincent. Hang on tight.
Hi, this is Ruby.
And I'm Hater.
And we host the Mimiverse Bonfire Podcast.
A podcast based on Christopher R. Mim, a Minnesota filmmaker who's got 8 films under his belt, soon to be 9.
And they're all 1950s-style black and white movies.
The podcast revolves around actors, the making of the films, and various other little fun bits.
And technicians.
You can find us at sainteuphoria.com.
Or like us on Facebook.
That would be the Mimiverse Bonfire Podcast. Hope you tune in.
I'd like to welcome to Monster Kid Radio a filmmaker by the name of Dennis Vincent. Before I reached out to him, I didn't even realize that I had one of the DVDs that he was involved with in my DVD collection. He's one of the co-directors of the Aurora Monsters, the model craze that gripped the world. But I reached out to him because he's remaking a John Agar film. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I could. It really didn't start in film. Actually, my background is actually in painting. I was actually a painter and sculptor and have a BFA in that. And eventually I wanted to make instructional art videos. I thought I would do that.
Oh.
And that led to me wanting to hone my skills before I actually started. And I wanted to do something that would help me. So I wanted to do like a 20-minute documentary. And I happened to know Cortland Hall. I met him, and I wanted to do a documentary on his Witch's Dungeon. And 20 minutes led to 2 hours, eventually, after about a year's work. And eventually, we started doing conventions. We did conventions together, and to help promote the movie and the documentary, it just kind of went from there. I just kind of really got the bug for really enjoying a lot of the horror films. I watched them as a kid, but I didn't watch a lot of films. It wasn't until much later on. I always wanted to do film, but it was kind of unreachable, I think, for most people because of the cost. And it wasn't until I think the 90s or so that you started getting, these, non-linear editing systems that made it possible for us, and the costs came down. So it became a way to do it. So that's kind of how I started, like a lot of other independents who did that. It just kind of went from there.
You cut your teeth on the documentary, The Witch's Dungeon, which is a great documentary. Yeah. I enjoyed that one. Yeah. When you got involved with this project, you said you caught the bug. That was pretty much it for you? You were like, okay, I'm making a movie now. This is where I want to go?
I wanted to continue because I think most people that start off doing independent work, I think documentary feels easy for them. It feels like an easier thing to do than to do a narrative piece. And that's kind of where I started. I figured I could be in control. You don't have to hire actors. Just a matter of kind of taking your time and, gathering information, interviews, that kind of thing. It's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work. You actually don't think it is until you actually do it. There's a lot, involved in that. But it was a way of, starting that I first started. So I went from that. Then we went into another documentary, which was the Aurora Monsters. That one was the second one. But after that, I kind of wanted to go and, do narrative pieces is really what I really wanted to do. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to be doing monster movies, so yeah.
Well, I was going to say the Aurora Monsters had the bits with Zachary kind of leading into and talking about and guiding the documentary. So you had a little bit of narrative there, but now you're more focused on narrative is what I'm going to do from now on.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, we did, and we had Zach. And actually, it's funny because that was something that I actually was just thinking of having Zachary just do voiceover. But it was actually Cortland's idea to kind of have him in there as, as an added thing to actually visually have him there. Bill Diamond had created sets for that. We had went to his studio, and he did a great job in creating a set for Zachary. And Zach was great. I mean, he was there. We had him there a long time, but he was a trooper, and we just had fun. We had a lot of fun doing that segment and putting together. It added something, to it wasn't a typical documentary. But we added a little bit of narrative and then a little bit of documentary to to the information that we had from people we interviewed. I mean, it was great. We had James Bama, who had never been interviewed before. He had been interviewed before, but he turned down so many interviews he wouldn't be interviewed. I think there was something he told us something like he had did something for, it was like 60 Minutes or someone like that. They were there all day long, and this was way back in the 70s, I think, and he said that there was like a small sound bite that he ended up doing. So they trampled through his house, and they were there all day, so he said, I'll never do another interview again, and he didn't. He's turned down everyone. He turned, Good Morning America. He's turned down everyone, and people were just shocked. They said, how did you get the interview with him? And I actually came through, if you know Roger Kessel, I think the guy who designed the shark, the Jaws poster for Jaws.
Okay.
He knew James Bond, and through him, that's actually how we got contact. He'd urged us to send the Witch's Dungeon documentary to him first so that he could see the quality that, these weren't just sound bites, that we actually allowed the speaker to go on at length, whatever they wanted to talk about. And actually, we cut ourselves out from asking questions. So it was just the viewer. We'd prompt them, and they would just sort of restate the question. And that's how we conducted an interview. So it gave them more time. And so when he saw the documentary, he called us up. And actually, we were in California doing a lot of interviews out there. And we were already across country because we lived in Connecticut. But we drove all the way to California to do interviews there with people like Julie Adams and Leonard Maltin. And I think Mark Hamill was another one we did interviews with a lot of people. And we came all the way back to Connecticut. And James Bama lives in Wyoming. And he gave us a call like 2 weeks or a week after we were home. And he said, yeah, I'll do the interview. So we had to drive all the way to Wyoming to do the interview. We could have done it out here because it came through Colorado. But we said we have to do this, since he turned down, everyone. This was like a lifetime chance. So we went out there, and he was extremely nice and did a great interview with him. And that was exciting. And then later on, we got a hold of Andrew Yanchis, who was, I think, the project designer. I'm trying to think my memory back, but I think that's what he was. He was a production designer for Aurora Model Kit back in the 60s when they were doing that. So we got hold of him. He knew Ray Myers. He said, Ray Myers is still around. He's the sculptor. He had designed the sculpture for Bride of Frankenstein, and he did Godzilla, I think, and he also did Ghidorah, I think, which was the other one. And there was a couple of others, but I think his son said there was other ones he designed, but he just didn't want to say that if he knew for sure because his memory had he's done so many sculptures, he couldn't remember. But we got an interview with him. We went all the way to, I think, Pennsylvania for that one. And we were so excited to have that. But that sort of generated a lot of interest. A lot of people started, asking us, wow, this, sounds really good. So we, got some interviews in some of the monster magazines, and it generated a lot of interest. And rightly so, because, a lot of people didn't even know about these people were still around, some of them,
Sure.
And that really kind of where it went. That's kind of how it went.
Now, you said that you had watched some of these movies as a kid. Were you building horror models as a kid, or did you have a horror host that you watched, or anything like that?
No, actually, I grew up in Denver. I actually left when I was 23. I moved out to New England. I lived in New York City as well. And then I moved back just about 3 years ago. So I've been here back. But there was somebody who told me that there was a horror host here in Denver at that time. I'm 51 years old, so I must have been, I don't know, let's see if this was 60, what year were we talking about, 64, 65, around there when they started having these, when the Monster Kids came out, I think. And
Okay.
I would have only been 1 year old, 2 years old, so I was a little too young. But I do know that we used to watch creature features with my father when I was really young. I don't remember. I must have been maybe 5, maybe 6 years old. And I don't remember any horror hosts. And I know there was one because somebody told me there was a horror host. It was a guy who did the morning show. It was called Blinky. And he later on hosted the horror show, I guess, on Saturday evenings or Saturday nights for creature features. So I watched, things like The Wolfman. I remember those very clearly. I remember watching Son of Frankenstein and a lot of those. So I remember, and I liked them. I liked them very much. And I never had nightmares. Nothing ever scared me. But I really enjoyed those movies. So I watched a little bit of it. But I can't say that, no, I didn't make the kits. I did once do that. I won a prize when I was in 5th grade. So this was 1975. And I won one of the Aurora Monster kits, but it was a square boxed one that they had, and it was a Frankenstein, I remember. And I built that, but that was about it. So I remember. I didn't really build. I think I was a little too young to be aware of them.
To really get into it?
Yeah, I was just too young.
So,
I was only, like I said, I think when they came out, there were 64, 65, I think, when it came out. So I was only 2 years old, just a little too young for that. And I know they continued with them, as the line went on, for a while, them making those. But I didn't really. I think I just had the Frankenstein I had. I still remember that one. I did put that one together as a kid. That was all I had, though. But I love them now. I mean, I think they're wonderful, they're great pieces, and I wish I had been more involved.
Well, you can always catch up now. It's not like they went anywhere. You can still find them somewhere, right? On eBay for the originals or the reissues, yeah.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah, we had used some of them. We had Frank Winsper he's the president for Mobius Models, and they had, when we released the first, because actually we didn't have the full thing edited. We had another version of the Aurora Monsters edited for the release at Wonderfest. So what we did is we released just 100 copies. And with that, Frank had actually made a special Frankenstein monster, I think, and I think it glowed in the dark. It's just a little one. And when you bought the DVD, they gave you the little monster came with this little kit. So I don't know if any of them are still around or not, but I never got one myself. but that's what he did, and it was really nice because we had actually had the Mobius model kit. We'd had interviewed actually Frank, and we talked about how they're still making those kits right now. Like the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and all those things. So actually, he gave us the big Frankie. Yeah, one of those.
Oh, right.
And a couple of other ones, too. I can't remember the rest of them he gave us so that we could put in the movie to show and feature. And then I think the other one that we used is we actually had Mike Rutherford. He did a lot of painting for that. We actually filmed a lot of his kits. And it was the ones that he's the actor, not Dan Roebuck, but the other guy. He's the one that was a sculptor. He did the sculpting.
Was that Jeff Yeager?
That's it, Jeff Yeager. Yes, that's it. Okay, he was very happy when he saw the documentary because he said that I did a really good job of lighting those models. And those were painted, again, by Rutherford, and those were the Jeff Yeager sculpts. And we shot those actually in Rhode Island at Mike's house. And I photographed all those. I put color gels in there, and it took me 6 hours to shoot those things, to get the lighting and to get the position of the camera just the way they looked like in the model kits. And then we just rotated them, And he said they looked really good, so I was very happy with that. I tried to light them the way they did, But I get because it was, again, based on James Blama's paintings,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was trying to do, is because he said that he was really disappointed when he opened up the model kit when he was a kid, thinking that, well, these don't look like the painting. So he decided to actually sculpt them to look like the painting. And so when they actually made them, they did look like the painting. But then I had the raw kit, but I had to light it now. So I wanted to make it look as close as I could for the documentary. So I brought in all kinds of color gels, and we set up there in Mike's living room, and I spent 6 hours turning those things on a turnstile and lighting them and everything. Because he had the paintings that he did on those kits that Mike did were wonderful. He did a really great job.
Now, and I'm assuming now through working on things like The Witch's Dungeon and the Aurora Monsters documentaries, you now have kind of rekindled or maybe even started a new love of these classic monster movies. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, I would have to definitely say that's absolutely true. I mean, going to the conventions and talking to people, and we did, we were there at the conventions, like many people, Bela Lugosi Jr., Sarah Karloff, all these people, and all the fans that were there, and the people that were there, just talking to them, even like at Monster Bash with Ron Adams and all those people at those shows were just wonderful. Talking to Conrad Brooks, you're just going to fall in love with all the movies, and that's what I did. I just fell in love with it and just jumped into it wholeheartedly. I've never looked back.
Can I put you on the spot and ask what some of your favorites are?
Some of my favorite movies, things like The Alligator People. I like The Hideous Sun Demon.
Oh, wow.
The Beast of Yucca Flats, She Creature, Monster of Piedras Blancas. That's another one I really like.
Oh, yeah.
And I like some of the other ones, like the Mexican ones, like, Night of the Bloody Apes and Brainiac. Things like that. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, Robot Monster, which is really great, and we did interviews with when we were out in California with Bob Burns, and that was wonderful. I mean, to go on there and see, his collection of things that he has there, all the movies, that was just wonderful. So, yeah, those are the kind of things I like. I love those kind of movies. I just fell in love with them, and I want to make some of those movies. That's why we did this. And I wanted to actually start off with something that was familiar to me, instead of starting from scratch. I wanted to kind of capture the spirit of those films. So I thought, well, why not do, and it's really not a directly, this movie that I have, it's actually called The Cosmic Creature. And it's just loosely based on Night Fright. It is,
okay.
Yeah, and I don't think we talked about that movie, that's what I was doing, the remake with John Agar. It is Night Fright, right. 1967. That movie's in public domain. So I thought, why not? I could start with something like that. And actually kind of give it a little bit more dimension, add some characters to it, and kind of do some things that I heard a lot of people didn't like about it, And some of the things that I think the movie had problems with is that, I mean, first of all, I love that movie, even with some of the faults that it has. But I thought some of the things that they did is that I think they kind of wrote something they couldn't achieve, they couldn't produce, because, there was supposed to be a rocket ship that crashes. You never see the rocket ship. It's supposed to be behind these trees. You never see the crashed rocket ship or anything. We're doing that. We're actually going to build, a life-size, or roughly, it's going to be about 2 car lengths, I believe. We've got already plotted out that we're going to be building, so it's going to be, you can see a crashed rocket ship. You can actually see a rocket ship and, green screen, but we're going to have that in there. They were shooting day for night, which you can see clearly.
Yeah, it's true.
That it was very underexposed, everything they did in the end product. You really can't even see the monster, so people complained a lot about that. You can't even see the creature, So we're shooting this really at night, and we're going to be using, good lighting, and we're going to try to do the best production we can on this. And we're adding more to it, because a lot of what they did with that movie, a lot of it's padded with, John Agar walking around looking for the creature, looking for clues, and, they're just padding it with time because they really didn't have enough material, I don't think. But this, we've actually taken characters and we've given it more dimension, and it's still basically, I gave the script actually to a friend of mine who's a script writer. And he looked at it, he'd seen the movie, he'd never seen it before, but he had watched the movie, and then he had read the script, and he said, that it was a close imaging of that movie. So even though that it's not the same story, if you've seen this movie, you can definitely tell it's the same. Basically, it's the same movie. But I've added, like I said, a few more characters to kind of give it a little bit more depth to it. But it's basically, they're all there. And I actually even haven't changed the names. I'm using the same names that were in the other movie of the characters. So, yeah.
I noticed that when I was looking at your Facebook page that you do have a Sheriff Clint Crawford as your lead, I suppose, in the film, which was John Agar's character in Night Fright. For our listeners who don't know much about Night Fright, as you said, it is a public domain film. It's kind of a smaller movie. It's a lower budget affair, and yeah, it's pretty dark in spots because they did shoot day for night, and it doesn't quite work in terms of the monster reveal at the end. This is in the late 60s, so we definitely want to see the monster. They're not trying to hide it as much, and it's not as visible as I suppose we'd like. And it sounds like, based on what you're saying and based on what I've seen on your Facebook page for the movie, you're definitely making sure the monster is worth seeing. I've seen a sculpture. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, and that's very important. I mean, as monster fans, we the monster is important to us. That's why we watch, because that's why we collect them. I mean, I have sculptures of all those movies myself because I want them. We want them. So I spend time. So for me, it was very important to make sure that monster, is going to look decent, or at least some thought's been put into it. Not everybody's going to like the monster I created, but since I know that he was a mutation, from, I think it was supposed to be 40 species, if you watch the movie, 40 species that have fused together from the cosmic, rays of the sun. And, of course, the ship crashes onto Earth, and then, of course, he's this mutant that goes on and terrorizes a small town. And so it was my vision of in the sculpture, if you go on the Facebook page I have, that's only the bust. I actually have started to create the rest of the monster. And I'm not revealing that yet. And the reason I don't want to reveal is I figure I can reveal some of it, but not all of it. And that's sort of an argument. And I mean, something that I had to give some thought to, because I asked friends. I go, what do you think of, like the way Universal was? They would, they were so secretive about the creature from the Black Lagoon, keeping it under wraps. You don't want to reveal the monster till you actually release it. And I thought, I don't know if I want to do that, because if it's a monster movie and you're talking about it, people want to see the monster, So I figured I could at least reveal the head, what it'll look like. But the rest of it, I'm keeping that closed. But it just basically, it looks a little bit kind of like an octopus, turned around the other way, and he kind of looks like a wolf, and at the same time, he looks like a bat, and he's got a lot of fur on him. That's kind of what he is. But he's going to be film fabricated. I have the actor that's going to be doing that. I've only cast actually 3 principal actors for this so far. I have not cast the rest of my actors yet. But the guy that's going to be playing the monster is a guy named Jason Leacek, and he's like 6'4", so we're going to actually even give him a little bit more height. But we're building his foam fabrication costume, and it's working on that already, and he's going to look good, I think.
So the sculpt that you see in the covered art, the episode image of this episode of Monster Kid Radio, is the sculpt of the monster that Dennis put on the Facebook page for The Cosmic Creature. It's facebook.com/The Cosmic Creature, no spaces. Again, there will be a link in the show notes, but it's pretty easy to find if you're on Facebook. He gave us permission to go ahead and use an image of that sculpt, of that bust, as the episode image. I think it looks pretty cool. It's got this kind of wolf snout with, like he said, tentacles kind of running back, and depending on which side of the face you're looking at, you can't really tell how many eyes it has. It's really kind of a unique 3D rendering of, well, a crazy mutated monster. So I'm excited for this movie. I really hope that it happens, and I really hope that you come back in a couple of days to hear more about what Dennis has planned for this, we keep calling it a remake, but this film inspired by the John Agar film, Night Fright. I want to thank Dennis for taking the time out of his weekend to record with us here on Monster Kid Radio, and really appreciate his flexibility. We set up a time, and then I had to reschedule it, and I really appreciate him taking some time out of his business and personal life to make this happen. And I appreciate the Beloved Invaders for letting us play their music on this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Again, we're going to be playing the song that actually appears in the film, performed by the Beloved Invaders, in the next episode of Monster Kid Radio. So I hope that you come back for that. I hope you come back for part 2 of our chat with Dennis Vincent. I hope you come back to find out if you want a copy of Argo Man, the Fantastic Superman, provided by Dorado Films. And I hope you remember now and always that John Agar rules. Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. Of course, that does not apply to the song Tamarindo that belongs to the Beloved Invaders. It's from their album Tamarindo. You can find it at their website, thebelovedinvaders.com. It appears with their permission on this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Talk to you in a couple of days. Bye.